Hi, my name is Garrett Ainsworth. I'm the CEO and president of District Metals Corp. We are an explorer and developer in Sweden. We entered Sweden in 2020. Our flagship project is the Viken property that hosts the Viken deposit, energy metals deposit. It is the largest undeveloped uranium deposit in the world. We've been very busy in 2025 with airborne geophysical surveys and mineral resource estimates, which is setting ourselves up nicely for 2026. All the while, the political scenario in Sweden has become very positive, and the government has stated they intend to lift the current ban on uranium mining in the fourth quarter of 2025, with the legislation hopefully being changed on January 1st of 2026. We're also very well capitalized, and we have an excellent team to execute.
Yeah, good to see you. So we haven't seen you for, oh, crikey, July last year, it says here. Maybe let's talk about how you picked up this asset and what it is that you've got, and because this really was an option play on, I say, this moratorium coming off, and it looks like it's heading that way. So it's all worked out, has it?
It is definitely headed in the right direction for sure. So yeah, early 2023. Well, maybe let's just rewind to late 2022. New government came in Sweden, center-right coalition. They stated they're pro nuclear energy, and they stated that they were going to lift the ban on uranium mining. Now, this has taken a while, but this with my background in uranium in the Athabasca Basin, looking at high grade, I started looking at uranium potential in Sweden, and I kind of knew about the Viken deposit. So right away, we jumped on that pretty quickly. We were able to stake up 68% of the Viken deposit for a very low cost. A year later, we acquired the remaining 32% through a private vendor for about 4.5 million shares, 100,000 cash, and a 2% NSR. And then the year later, which would be essentially the beginning of 2025, we acquired the 2% NSR for 500,000 shares. So now we own 100% of the Viken deposit, and it's royalty free. And yeah, it's all at a very good time as the government keeps putting out positive news as to their progress in lifting, in their intent to lift the uranium moratorium.
Right. No, so it comes with a little bit of history in the sense that the first mineral resource done in 2017, PEA done in 24. I think, was it 20?
Yeah, so the last work that was done, it was under, at that time, NI 43-101 by Continental Precious Minerals. And they did a PEA along with a mineral resource estimate. I will say the work was not done very well, because what happened is they did a very large mining scenario, almost 700 million tons. And, from a CapEx standpoint, it made the CapEx go up quite a bit. It's also not good for social license. And one of the key things is they did not include the vanadium. And the reason why they didn't include the vanadium is because they made the mining scenario so large that if they had gone forward with mining, with including your vanadium, it would have oversupplied the world with vanadium at that time. So they just took it out altogether, which is not a good idea, because in the Viken energy metals deposit, vanadium is actually one of the most valuable metals commodities in the deposit itself.
Right. Well, maybe let's get into kind of the construct of what the mineral resource tells us, because it's a polymetallic. We're talking about, you got uranium, you got zinc, copper, nickel, and the vanadium in there. It sounds quite complex. Are you gonna focus in on any one area particularly?
I think the uranium definitely is what's catching the attention for everyone. And obviously, every week or every other week, we're getting positive news about nuclear energy and, the political turmoil going on around the world. It's really just pointing to the EU needs a domestic source of uranium to, keep moving forward towards a low carbon green energy transition. So uranium is the main focus of the Viken deposit, but vanadium is a bit of a wild card because it's at the bottom right now. And it's mostly used for strengthening steel, but vanadium also has a very large application towards these vanadium redox batteries that are used for long-term storage of energy for wind farms, for solar panels. So I mean that on its own, that could really explode in the future. And then there's also potash, which is, I think, a very important. I think it counts as a critical raw material under the EU. And there's no real source for potash, especially sulfate of potash, which is a high-end agricultural product. There's no source in Europe that I really know of, especially in Northern Europe. I think the potash comes out of like places like Israel, and there's phosphate that comes out of like Morocco. But for Europe to have a source of potash like in Europe itself, I think would be very, very positive. And then there's lower concentrations of nickel, molybdenum, zinc, and copper. That's it's been shown to also potentially recover from this alum shale Viken deposit. And something that's not being looked into that I think is very important for us to do is to also look at the potential for rare earth elements, because that is obviously a big thing right now, where 90% of rare earth elements are coming out of China. And the EU and other Western countries have stated they want to try to get away from the dependence on countries like Russia and China for these critical raw materials, which include a lot of rare earth elements.
Okay, so it sounds like you've updated the mineral resource estimate from 2014. Well, I think the PEA was 2014. But
yeah, it was also a mineral resource estimate.
Okay.
Yeah, so we updated. We did our own mineral resource estimate in April of 2025. So just
And what were the changes there? Because obviously you say the previous work wasn't particularly good. So how have you improved it on the resource estimate?
Yeah, so we did just a resource estimate, not a PEA. The previous PEA was not good in that they made it too large and they took out the vanadium. But what we did with our mineral resource estimate that we released in April of 2025 is we actually, the size of the mineral resource estimate increased quite a bit. And part of the reason why that happened is because our plan is to do a much smaller mining scenario. So on that basis, the mineral resource could be done differently. So it didn't have to be this big rectangular block of resource. It's got areas that are a little bit smaller. And then we also included vanadium, which was not included in the historical mineral resource estimate from 2014. We also included potash. We also included phosphate. We also included some rare earth elements. But I should mention, historically, we didn't drill any of these holes. We used historical drill holes because they were, not so old that they still had good QA/QC done behind them. But the analytical method that was used for the 2014 mineral resource estimate did not include the full spectrum of rare earth elements. So that's something we need to do. We need to either go back to the historical drill holes and resample for the full spectrum of the rare earth elements, or we need to drill our own holes. Okay,
so you're using a lot of historic data. I guess it is a kind of factor of what's gone on the last few years. We don't want to kind of spend money until what the outcome of the moratorium is, right? So I take that on board. But if you're working towards this PEA, will you be doing additional? And will you be doing additional data to kind of include in your PEA?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I think we're going to have to do our own metallurgy. I'm actually going to call after we chat here with our consultant to kind of nail down some ways forward for doing a PEA on our own on the Viken deposit.
Right, and I appreciate polymetallics are kind of complex based, and not many investors sort of truly understand how you go about chasing it. But I need to get a sense that you do. So if I'm looking at some of the things that it's a uranium focus, but with a lot of valuable byproduct like the vanadium. But vanadium market, for instance, has not done well in the, since 2017 when it went on a bit of a run. It's come off. I think it's been the death of a few companies that we've certainly had on the channel here. How do you focus and allocate at a PEA stage on what's reasonably economic versus what's nice to have?
Well, I mean, I think you have to look at the sum of all parts. And I mean, one thing you can view it a few different ways because there is a polymetallic nature to it. So I mean, I got to be careful what I say and not to cross the NI 43-101 boundary. But I think there's ways to be able to show in a PEA that listen, we can mine it, and some of the metals might cost nothing to mine because they're being paid for by other metals or minerals that are. Okay,
so no, I appreciate the delicate dance you have to do regulatory wise, but I've got I just want to push you on it. So for those who perhaps want to understand what they're investing into, and maybe perhaps even where you think the value, there's a surge in value since this year has come from. Is it on the uranium?
Absolutely, yeah. I think I mean for us to be able to say that District Metals controls 100% royalty free the largest undeveloped uranium deposit in the world, it catches a lot of attention. The first criticism I hear, well, it's low grade. And I am a high grade uranium geologist. I come from the Athabasca Basin. I'll admit, it took me a while to get my head around low grade uranium. But when I started looking at it and realizing, okay, actually, this is about the simplicity of a mining scenario, and it's also about the value of the rock. So if you've got something that's lower grade, but it's like outcropping near surface, and all you have to do is an open pit, that's going to cost a lot less than going down 800 meters, freezing rock, and taking out 20% rock, 20% uranium. So I mean, there's pros and cons to both, and I think after I've done my research, my due diligence on lower grade, and actually looked at low grade uranium deposits in Africa, in Namibia, they show a lot of really, really positive economic studies coming out of there. And those deposits do not have byproducts or other metals such as vanadium, potash, molybdenum, nickel, copper, zinc, blah, blah, blah. So they're just straight up uranium, and those grades getting mined, are as similar to what the Viken deposit has, or some a little bit higher.
Right. Okay. So maybe welcome to my world. I quite often have these discussions about high grade versus low grade, and as recently as last week, can we just talk through some of you mentioned some of them, but can we kind of run through maybe in priority order the variables which determine cost and therefore margin of whatever metals that you expect to be able to kind of produce here. So for you, it's relatively shallow, you seem to infer.
Absolutely, yeah. So
what do we know?
Lum shale, it's flat lying. It's a sedimentary rock. It was basically just a black mud sitting at the bottom of the ocean that acted as a sponge, and it sucked up all the metals. So into very high concentrations. So it was a very low oxygen environment. And now in the Viken there it's outcropping to being very shallow. So I mean the strip ratios are very good. I mean there are parts of this alum shale that's the host rock that go deeper. But we've actually flown an airborne survey that's mapped out the location of the alum shale just beautifully. Okay, and for you, obviously the comps with Namibia, well understood. I think anyone with assets in the Athabasca, including yourself formerly, would point to that kind of imbalance. But what do you think is going to kind of the kind of key points with regards to this low grade are? What kind of got you around the corner? Was a single most important factor that kind of got you around the corner? Well, the two points was, I mean, first off, the simplicity of the mining, because in Athabasca Basin things can get pretty complicated pretty quickly. Cigar Lake is an amazing deposit, obviously run by Cameco, but it is like the Lamborghini of mines, like just how they're drilling holes on 5 meter centers, freezing the rock, and then they have to like take it out with robots, like totally automated, and it's highly technical. So the cost, your OpEx goes way up for something like that. And then also, I mean, because you're dealing with high, like very high grade, like there's isolated pockets of uranium at Cigar and MacArthur that'll be 80%, even 90%. So that needs to be, there's a lot of expense when you're processing and then also dealing with the tailings from such a high grade operation. But when you're dealing with lower grade, and it's like at surface and it's open pit scenario, your OpEx becomes much lower. And I also think that, one reason why there's not a lot of M&A in the Athabasca Basin is because a lot of major mining companies are intimidated by how complex mining is there and expensive. It's not for everyone. Cameco and Orano are amazing. What they've done in the Athabasca Basin with Cigar and MacArthur is incredibly good. I mean, that's one good thing about NextGen is it's basement hosted, so it should be. It's not as tricky as mining at that contact between the sandstone and the basement, where you get that toothpaste like mineralization with clay all around. But yeah, I cannot overstate enough, like the simplicity of a potential mining scenario at Viken is far exceeds any kind of mining scenario in the Athabasca Basin where you're going down to the unconformity.
Okay, well, what do you think that you're going to have to prove to the market? Like, say, you've had a run up on this great expectations because it's just scale of this thing. But as you say, these kind of alum shales are kind of fine grained in nature. So how do you, in terms of things like I guess mineral liberation, how do you deal with the challenges of particle size and mineral locking? How do you justify vanadium and moly recoveries when the met work hasn't been demonstrated? What are your assumptions around all of the kind of minerals involved here, in terms of log cycle tests or however the heck you're going to get after this thing? So you're saying to the team now, we're about to put out a PEA. We need to do more than just surface, right? Going to need to really get into this. So what's the list of things that you've charged the team with doing?
First things first is for a PA, we need to select the optimal location because the Viken deposit is so large. It's about 4 kilometers wide by 6 kilometers long, and it continues. It's gigantic. So you're not obviously going to mine the whole thing. You need to focus in on a much smaller area. We would be targeting something more in the range of 50 to 100 million tons to be mined over 10 to 12 years. Make it more of like a quarry size. I could see us doing like an open pit hybrid with strip mining, dry stack tailings, so that you're reclaiming the land as you're advancing on one face. But location will have to do with 3 main things. Depth to the alum shell. You want it to be as shallow as possible. Thickness of the alum shell. You want to be as thick as possible. Ideally 50 meters or thicker. We now we're getting to know this from this mobile MT survey that we've recently flown. We'll have news out on this fairly soon. And then social license. That helps you kind of decide on the location. So once you have your location, then you either got to go, if it's within the existing mineral resource estimate, then great. If it's outside the current mineral resource estimate, then we would have to drill off an area. But the good thing about the alum shell is the continuity is so good that to get an inferred mineral resource estimate, you're talking about 300 meter drill spacing. So, you could drill off, 9 or 10 holes, could drill off 100 million tons if the alum shale is 100 meters thick. That is like mind-boggling to me. To only, and those 9 holes would only be like 200 meters deep. So call it 300 maybe. So say 3,000 meters, which would cost $900,000 Canadian. And you could potentially, if the alum shale is 100 meters thick, you could potentially have 100 million ton resource, and then move forward with a PEA on that, or we do it inside the existing mineral resource estimate. And then, yeah, the metallurgy is a big part of it. Historically, when I say historically, the last uranium cycle, 2004 to 2008, when Continental Precious Minerals was working on Viken, they did have problems with the metallurgy. They definitely did. They ended up doing some heap leach. Bio heap leach was not so good, and that's actually another reason why they took out the vanadium, because the vanadium didn't work well under the bio heap leach scenario. But our next door neighbors, Aura Energy, they have done more recent metallurgical work that's quite extensive. And they have shown that you can recover with you could have good recoveries of the uranium and the vanadium, and also add in potash as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think Aura Energy is a kind of good comp for this. And I think that like I say, we're discounting the 2014 PA because it did sound awfully complex what they were suggesting. You mentioned social license, maybe determining where you initially go. One, I should say, hopes that it's within the mineral resource estimate, but you're suggesting that potentially it may not be. What are the problems socially?
Oh, no, that wouldn't be necessarily due to the social license. That would just do.
Oh, sorry.
That okay. That's also to do with the shallowness of the alum shale and the thickness of the alum shale. So
okay.
If we see an area that ticks all the boxes and it looks better outside the current Viken mineral resource estimate, then we will probably want to do that. So to go in that direction. Also, like you want to pick your spots better. Like if you can do a mineral resource estimate and PEA in an area that's strictly like woodlands, that's probably going to be better than doing an area that's all farmland. And a lot of the Viken property is woodlands, but there are definitely villages and there are some some farms here and there as well. We also, have a good idea of who, certain landowners that are positive on a potential mining scenario of the Viken deposit, and we definitely have a good idea of the people that are absolutely negative against it. I mean, anytime you're talking about a potential open pit mine, you're going to get landowners that say, not in my backyard. It doesn't matter where you are, I think, in the world.
Right. Okay. Yeah, for sure. And just on the alum shales, the type of, and you just described in terms of the kind of network and recovery work, are you doing trade-off studies between because of the nature of I should say, the alum, are you doing trade-off studies in terms of the recovery of specific metals, or do you think that you genuinely have a good chance of actually getting after all of it? And if so, how much of that type of work are you putting into the PEA?
I think that'll be a big part of what we put into the PEA, making sure that we get the metallurgy as good as possible to a PEA level. Obviously, when you go to PFS and FS, it's going to get even more money is going to go into that. But I'd say that's going to be a very significant part of any economic studies, making sure that the metallurgy is as good as it gets, so that we can get recoveries really well, so that we also ideally we want a tailings that's dry, and that kind of feeds into like doing the best reclamation of the land, as we go, right? What you're putting back into the open pit.
Okay, so I just want to be clear. So in terms of the kind of the network that you kind of outlined, the whole process that you've been through, talking about the kind of recovery curves and flow sheet designs, and are we going to include pilot plant trials in there, or is that just too early? Should we expect that at the PFS level?
To be honest, I don't really know right now whether we'll be taking it that far with a PEA.
Okay.
I think that's going to be up for discussion with our consultant and what they're comfortable with, signing off on with a PEA.
Right. Okay. Okay. And just in terms of the rest of the portfolio, we're discounting everything else. We're putting a sort of zero value on everything else. Is that right?
Yeah, I suppose we probably are. I mean, we've got 4 other uranium properties. They're not greenfield. I mean, they all have uranium occurrences on them with historical drill results. Some of them have historical mineral resource estimates. They were all really done from the 1970s, 1980s. And out of those projects, 3 of them are not alum shell. They're higher grade type uranium properties. That includes Ardnasvarre, Nine Force, and Sockjarn. And then the 2 alum shell ones are obviously the Viken property, and then we've got a package of mineral licenses that we just call the alum shell properties.
Right. And okay, so in which case, come back to the weekend. What's the time frame on all of this? Because a lot of the information that's out there is obviously relating to the work that Continental Precious Metals did, and what you've done a good job today of doing is kind of discounting some of that work, but taking some of the rudimentary data and reinterpreting that. So that you haven't done much work yourself other than, well, what remind me again, what have you done?
So we've done an updated mineral resource estimate on the deposit in April 2025, but
using their data, or have you complemented that with your own?
Using their data, exactly.
Right. Okay. Right. So you've reinterpreted the old data, which you're saying they had done a bad job on. Fine. In terms of any work that you've done in the last couple of years, what does that include?
So what we've done that's brand new is we've flown this geophysical survey called Mobile MT, and I think it was about 800,000 or so to fly all the Viken project. But the main objective of flying that is whenever I'd go to Sweden and go to one of our alum shell properties, I'd be standing there going, this is so frustrating. I know I'm standing on alum shell, but I don't know exactly how thick it is, and I don't know how deep it is. How can we find this out? Because those are 2 of the most important parameters in deciding where to put a PEA, where to move forward on. And so I started talking to a lot of really smart geophysical consultants, and they Convolutions was actually the one that pointed me in the direction of the Mobile MT survey, and we did some forward modeling, so like conceptual modeling, and it showed that it would work in this environment. We flew it; it's worked beautifully, and so it's.
And you know that how? Have you put a hole in to kind of test?
Well, exactly, yeah. So we flew over top of the Viken deposit, and obviously there's a bunch of holes. There's about 122 holes. And then, we knew exactly where the mineralized alum shell was. And then we created cross sections, and we could see that, okay, this lines up perfectly with the results from the Mobile MT survey that are shown in like low resistivity, or it's conductive is another way to look at it.
So did that give you new data then? I'm trying to work it out. Is it chicken before the egg, or how does it work?
We haven't released that data yet, but we will.
Okay.
Yeah. We did put out a news release saying that we had completed the Mobile MT survey at Viken, and that the preliminary data shows us that it worked extremely well. So
that was a mechanism to validate historic data without putting expensive drills in holes. Well, not expensive,
exactly.
Right, gotcha.
Yeah, understood. The best part is now we know, with this data, we know which areas to focus on. We know which areas, to kind of leave behind. So it prioritizes things for us much better.
Right. So PEA expected when?
So there's 2 paths. The path where we decide to do a PEA within a within the existing mineral resource estimate. I would say, maybe that takes 6 months. There might be some changes to that based on how the metallurgical testing goes. But if we find that, from the mobile MT survey, if we find, okay, there's an area further to the north or to the south that looks like it might be a better area for us to do a PEA, then we would actually have to drill off a mineral resource estimate, report that, and then do a PEA on that. So obviously that would take longer. Maybe that takes closer to 12 months. And these are very rough estimates. Again, because the metallurgy is going to be a big part, and I'm not exactly sure how long the metallurgical work is going to take. We haven't really got into deep discussions about estimated time for testing of lump shells.
Fantastic. Well, look, super exciting. Nice to see the kind of company kind of come alive in the last few months, and as the market is very buoyant for most of the metals that you have. So, Garrett, stay in touch. Let us know how you get on with all of the above, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Matthew. That's great.